May 28, 1944, 27,000 feet above occupied France. Staff Sergeant Thomas "Tommy" O'Connor's knees ached from kneeling on the bicycle seat of his B-17's tail section for over 2 hours. The frigid air seeped through his flight suit, numbing his fingers even through thick wool gloves. Through the fogged plexiglass window, he spotted a glint of silver. And Me 109, banking hard to position for a 6 o'clock low attack, the same angle that had downed 3 bombers in his formation last month. O'Connor's hands tightened on the twin .50 caliber Browning M2s. He squinted through the standard issue ring and bead sight aligning the metal post with the fighter's wings. The Me 109 was closing fast, its engine roaring even through the thin air. O'Connor estimated the distance, maybe 800 yards, and guessed at the deflection, firing a 5-second burst. Tracers streaked behind the German plane, missing by a wide margin. The Me 109's 20mm cannons flashed. O'Connor heard the crack of shells tearing through aluminum, felt the bomber lurch as shrapnel hit the tail. "Tail section hit!" he yelled into his oxygen mask. "Fighters still on us." The Me 109 circled for another run. O'Connor fired again, this time holding the trigger longer. More tracers, more misses. The fighter's next burst shattered the plexiglass beside him, sending shards into his cheek. He ducked, blood dripping onto his flight suit, as the Me 109 pulled away, unscathed, having inflicted critical damage to the B-17's left stabilizer. By the time they landed back at RAF Mildenhall in England, O'Connor's hands were shaking not from cold, but from frustration. He'd fired 560 rounds that day and hit nothing. The B-17, nicknamed Lady Luck, would be grounded for a week of repairs. 2 crew members had been wounded. In the mess hall that night, O'Connor sat staring at his plate, listening to other gunners swap stories of near misses and lost friends. "Same as always," muttered Staff Sergeant Jake Miller, a tail gunner with 12 missions under his belt. "We fire enough lead to build a tank and still can't hit a barn door. The brass keeps saying, 'More training.' But what good is training when the sights are garbage?" O'Connor nodded. He'd spent 6 weeks in gunnery school in Texas, firing at towed targets under clear skies. Even there, his hit rate had been barely 10%. In combat turbulence, cold, enemy fire, it was worse. The ring and bead sight gave no help with speed, no way to track tracers, no feedback on where his bullets were actually going. It was like trying to hit a moving car with a rifle while standing on a roller coaster. That night, O'Connor snuck out to the flight line with a flashlight and a notebook. He climbed into Lady Luck's tail section, the smell of hydraulic fluid and cordite still thick in the air. He ran his fingers over the ring and bead sight, then looked up at the curved plexiglass window. When he tilted his head, he saw his reflection, and beyond it, the entire rear of the bomber. A thought hit him. If he could see his tracers while he fired, he could correct his aim. But how? He pulled out his notebook and sketched. What if he mounted small mirrors on the tail's metal frame, angled to show the path of his tracers? What if he added a better sight, something with a reticle? Not just 2 pieces of metal. It was a crazy idea, he knew. The Army Air Forces banned unauthorized modifications to aircraft, but as he thought about the men wounded that day, about the bombers going down every week, he decided crazy was better than doing nothing. O'Connor spent the next 3 nights refining his sketches, measuring angles with a pocket ruler he'd stolen from the base supply room, and scribbling notes on everything from mirror placement to sight alignment. He needed mirrors that could withstand the slipstream at 25,000 feet. Something sturdy, not the fragile glass from a shaving kit. He needed a sight that could handle the cold and vibration, something better than the clunky ring and bead. Most of all, he needed someone who could build it. His first stop was the base machine shop, where he found Technical Sergeant Leo Mac Mackenzie, a 42-year-old mechanic from Detroit with a scar across his jaw and a reputation for bending rules. Mac had spent the Depression fixing farm equipment with baling wire and hope. In the Air Force, he'd become the guy everyone went to for off-the-books repairs, broken radios, jammed guns, even a pilot's custom coffee mug holder. O'Connor laid his notebook on Mac's workbench, his hands sweating. "I need to modify my tailgun sight," he said, voice low. "Something to see tracers, adjust fire faster." Mac flipped through the sketches, raising an eyebrow. "This is illegal, kid. Tech order 0120-Egg 2 says no unauthorized mods to defensive gear. You could get court-martialed." "I know," O'Connor said. "But last mission, we had 2 men shot up because I couldn't hit the fighter that was picking us apart. If I'd had something better—" Mac stopped him with a wave. He pointed to a sketch of 3 convex mirrors mounted on the tail frame. "Where you gonna get mirrors like this? Not from supply. They'll ask 100 questions." "I thought, maybe salvage," O'Connor said. "From crashed planes? Navigation equipment has mirrors, right?" Mac grunted, then nodded. "Got a P-51 that went down last week near Cambridge. Its gun sight's busted. But the navigation mirrors are probably good. And I got some aluminum scrap in the back. Can bend brackets for 'em." He looked up at O'Connor, his scar twisting as he smiled. "When's your next mission?" 3 days, target Berlin." Mac slammed his fist on the bench. "Then we work fast. Meet me here at midnight, bring a flashlight, and keep your mouth shut." For the next 2 nights, O'Connor and Mac worked in the shadows of the machine shop, using stolen tools and salvaged parts. Mac cut aluminum brackets with a hacksaw, bending them to O'Connor's measurements using a vise and a hammer. They snuck out to the crash site of the P-51 at dawn, slipping past the guard tower with a sack full of mirrors and a single undamaged reflector sight from the fighter's instrument panel. The sight was small, with a glowing red reticle that lit up in the dark, perfect for high altitudes. Installing the system was trickier. They climbed into Lady Luck's tail section at 2 a.m., Mac balancing on the bicycle seat while O'Connor held a flashlight. The mirrors went first, one on the left, one on the right, one above the gun mount, each angled to give O'Connor a clear view of the sky behind the bomber. Mac drilled small holes in the tail frame, securing the brackets with lock nuts he'd borrowed from the tool room. The reflector sight was mounted on the gun yoke, its reticle aligned so O'Connor could see it without tilting his head. By 5 a.m., they were done. The system looked rough, brackets jutted out at odd angles, mirrors held in place with safety wire. But it worked. O'Connor tested the guns, swiveling them back and forth. The reticle stayed centered on his field of vision, and the mirrors showed him exactly where the barrels were pointing. "Looks like a junkyard," Mac said, wiping grease from his hands. "But it'll keep you alive." O'Connor clapped him on the back. "Thanks, Mac. If I make it back." "Just don't tell anyone I did this," Mac said. "And if you get caught, you never saw me." The next morning, O'Connor's crew gathered for the Berlin mission briefing. Lieutenant James Jimmy Carter, the pilot, handed out target maps, his voice tight. "Berlin's got heavy flak and more fighters than we've seen in weeks. Stay in formation, watch your 6. O'Connor said nothing about his modification. When they walked to the plane, Carter patted him on the shoulder. "You good back there, Tommy? Last mission was rough." "Better than good, sir," O'Connor said. "Trust me." They took off at 07:00 hours, joining a formation of 3 12B-17s heading east. By noon, they were over Germany, the sky dark with flak. O'Connor knelt in the tail section, adjusting the reflector sight's brightness. The red reticle glowed softly, cutting through the haze. At 12:45, he spotted them. 4 Me-109s, flying in a V formation, angling for the formation's rear. "Fighters at 6 o'clock low!" he yelled into the intercom. "4 of 'em," Carter swore. "Stay tight, boys, tail gunner, do your thing." The Lead Me 109 broke off from the group, diving toward Lady Luck. O'Connor tracked it with the reflector sight, centering the reticle on the fighter's engine. He fired a short burst, 2 seconds, and watched the tracers in the left mirror. They fell behind the Me 109. "Too slow," he muttered. He adjusted the reticle, leading the fighter by a full inch, and fired again. This time, the tracers in the mirror converged on the Me 109's wing. There was a flash fuel, O'Connor thought, and the fighter spun away, trailing black smoke. "Got one!" he yelled. Before he could celebrate, a second Me 109 was on them, coming from the right. O'Connor swiveled the guns, using the right mirror to track his tracers. He fired, missed, adjusted, and fired again. A burst hit the Me 109's canopy, the pilot jerked, and the plane veered off, crashing into a cloud. "Probable kill!" O'Connor shouted. By the time the remaining fighters broke off, O'Connor had fired 210 rounds and downed 1 confirmed, 1 probable. The formation lost 7 bombers that day, but Lady Luck made it home, her tail section unscathed. When they landed, the crew swarmed O'Connor, slapping him on the back. "What the hell was that?" Carter said, grinning. "You were hitting everything." O'Connor hesitated, then nodded toward the tail. "I modified the sight mirrors. Better reticle." Carter's smile faded. "You did what, Tommy? That's illegal." "Yeah," O'Connor said, "but it worked. We're all here because of it." Carter stared at him for a long moment, then sighed. "Don't tell anyone yet. But secrets don't stay secret on a military base that night." The crew chief, Master Sergeant Earl Davis, found the modification during a post-flight inspection. He marched O'Connor to the squadron office, where Captain Harold Jensen, the armament officer, waited with a scowl. "Sergeant O'Connor," Jensen said, holding up a photo of the mirrors and sight. "Explain this." O'Connor stood at attention. "Sir, it's an improved sighting system. It lets me track tracers, adjust fire faster. I downed 2 fighters with it today." Jensen laughed, sharp and cold. "You think you're an engineer. This is a violation of every regulation we have. This could compromise the aircraft's structural integrity, cause a fire." "With all due respect, sir, it saved my crew," O'Connor said. "The standard sight doesn't work. This one does." Jensen's face turned red. "Remove it. Now. If I see it again, you're in front of a court. Marshal." O'Connor didn't move. "Sir, if I remove it, I can't protect my crew. Next mission, we might not come back." Before Jensen could reply, the door burst open. Major William, Bill Haley, the squadron commander, stepped in. He'd heard the shouting and wanted to know what was going on. When Jensen explained, Haley turned to O'Connor. "Show me," he said. 10 minutes later, they were standing in Lady Luck's tail section. O'Connor demonstrated the mirrors, the reflector sight, how he used them to track tracers. Haley leaned in, watching as O'Connor swiveled the guns, the reticle following his movements. "Does this work every time?" Haley asked. "Worked today, sir," O'Connor said. 2 fighters down, 210 rounds. Haley nodded, then turned to Jensen. "Captain, get the gun camera footage from today's mission. I want to see this for myself." Jensen hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, sir." That night, Haley watched the footage in his office, O'Connor's tracers, the Me 109's exploding, the precise adjustments he made using the mirrors. At 10 p.m., he called O'Connor to his office. "Your modification stays," Haley said, "but we're not calling it unauthorized anymore. We're calling it a field test. You fly 3 more missions with it, gun cameras rolling. If the hit rate holds, We'll talk about expanding it. O'Connor grinned. Yes, sir. One more thing, Haley said. Keep it quiet. Higher command doesn't need to know. Yet. The 5th of June, 1944. Day -1. O'Connor's second field test mission takes them to Calais, France, where German coastal defenses are gearing up for an Allied invasion. The sky is overcast, visibility poor, perfect for testing the mirror system's limits. As Lady Luck joins a formation of 280 B-17s, O'Connor kneels in the tail, adjusting the reflector sight's reticle to cut through the fog. Turbulence up front. Carter calls over the intercom. The bomber lurches, and O'Connor grabs the gun yoke to steady himself. Through the plexiglass, he spots movement. A pair of Fepelu 190s skimming the treetops to avoid radar. They're flying low, using the clouds for cover. Classic sneak attack tactics the Luftwaffe has adopted to avoid tail gunners. Fepelu 190s at 6 o'clock, O'Connor yells. He tracks the lead fighter with the reflector sight, but the fog blurs his view. He flicks on the mirror lights, small bulbs Mac rigged from a damaged landing light, and the convex surfaces glow, cutting through the haze. Now he can see the tracer path clearly. The Fepelu 190 opens fire first, 20mm shells exploding near the tail. O'Connor fires a 3-second burst, watching the tracers in the left mirror. They're high. Turbulence has thrown off his aim. He adjusts the reticle down, leads the fighter by half an inch, and fires again. This time, the tracers hit the Fepelu 190's belly. The fighter's engine sputters, then catches fire, crashing into a field below. Confirmed kill, O'Connor shouts. The second Fepelu 190 breaks off, scared off by the accuracy of the return fire. When they land, Haley is waiting on the tarmac, gun camera footage in hand. He plays it on a portable projector in his office. O'Connor's tracers, the mirrors guiding his adjustments, the Fepelu 190 exploding. Fog, turbulence, low-altitude attack, Haley says, leaning back in his chair. And you still hit. That's not luck, O'Connor. That's a system. He pauses, then adds, I talked to the group commander this morning. He wants you to show this to the other tail gunners tomorrow. 0900 hours, Hangar 3. O'Connor's stomach drops. Sir, what if higher command finds out? They won't. Not yet, Haley says. We're calling it a tactical workshop. No paperwork, no official reports. Just you, the gunners, and Mac to help answer questions. The next morning, 32 tail gunners crowd into Hangar 3. Most are skeptical. Veterans with 15-plus missions who've learned to distrust quick fixes. Miller, the gunner who'd complained in the mess hall, crosses his arms. So this is the magic mirror everyone's talking about, he says, nodding at Lady Luck's tail section. Looks like junk. O'Connor doesn't take the bait. He climbs into the tail, gestures for Miller to join him. Take a look, he says. Miller kneels beside him, and O'Connor points out the mirrors, the reflector sight, how the reticle overlays the target. He explains how the mirrors show tracer paths, how to adjust for speed and turbulence. Miller grunts, then swivels the guns. Let's see, he says. O'Connor hands him a dummy tracer round, and Miller lines up on a distant hanger through the mirror. He can see the gun barrel's alignment. He says. You can actually tell where you're aiming. By the end of the hour, half the gunners are asking Mac to build them a system. I lost my last 2 crews to tail attacks, says Staff Sergeant Ray Torres, a quiet gunner from Puerto Rico. If this works, I'll take 2. Mac grins. I can build 4 a day if I get the parts. Haley nods, pulling a list from his pocket. Salvage details been told to set aside navigation mirrors and P-51 sights. You'll have what you need. Over the next 2 weeks, Mac and a team of volunteer mechanics work around the clock. They set up a makeshift assembly line in Hangar 3, cutting brackets, mounting mirrors, wiring sights. O'Connor trains gunners one by one, teaching them to adjust the reticle, read the mirrors, correct their fire in real time. On the 18th of June, 22B-17s from the squadron, all with O'Connor's modification, fly a mission to Stuttgart. The results are staggering. 14 confirmed fighter kills, 8 probables, and only 2 bombers lost. Tail gunners report hit rates of 22%, nearly triple the previous average. Word spreads to other squadrons. By July, gunners from the 384th Bomb Group are sneaking into Mildenhall to beg for O'Connor sights. A crew chief from the 92nd Bomb Group even offers Mac a case of whiskey for a priority build. But trouble comes in late July, when Brigadier General Walter Brooks, head of 8th Air Force's Armament Division, visits Mildenhall. He's heard rumors of unauthorized modifications and demands a tour of the flight line. Haley tries to stall, but Brooks is persistent. They walk past Lady Luck, and Brooks stops short. "What's that on the tail?" he says, pointing at the mirrors. Haley freezes. O'Connor, who's standing nearby, steps forward. "Sir, it's a field, modified sighting system. I designed it. It improves hit rates by over 200%. Brooks's face hardens. "You designed it, a sergeant? Do you have engineering credentials? Have you submitted this to Boeing for testing?" "No, sir," O'Connor says. "But it saved 17 crews in the last month. The gun camera footage." "I don't care about footage," Brooks snaps. "This is a violation of every safety protocol. It could cause structural failure, jam the guns, start a fire." "With all due respect, sir, it hasn't," O'Connor says. "Not once. We've flown 42 missions with it. No malfunctions, no fires, 29 confirmed kills." Brooks stares at him, then turns to Haley. "Major, order these modifications removed immediately. Every last one. And you," he points at O'Connor, "report to my office at 0800 tomorrow. We'll discuss disciplinary action." Haley nods, but his jaw is tight. After Brooks leaves, he pulls O'Connor aside. "Don't worry," he says. "I've got a call in to General Castle. He's over the 4th Bomb Wing. He's a pragmatist. He'll listen." That night, Haley stays up until 2 a.m., compiling data, mission reports, kill counts, gun camera footage, crew testimonials. He mails it to Castle with a handwritten note. This isn't about rules. It's about saving lives. The next morning, O'Connor reports to Brooks's office, expecting the worst. But Brooks is already on the phone, his face red. He hangs up, glares at O'Connor, and says, "General Castle wants to see you now." Castle's office is in a small building near the base headquarters. He's a tall man with a grey mustache, sitting behind a desk covered in mission maps. He waves O'Connor in, then plays a reel of gun camera footage, one of O'Connor's kills over Stuttgart. "Brooks says this is unsafe," Castle says, pausing the film. "What do you say?" O'Connor leans forward. "Sir, it's not perfect. It's made from scrap parts. But it works. Every gunner who's used it has come back alive. That's safer than any regulation." Castle nods. He pulls out a stack of papers, Haley's data, 29 kills, 42 missions, 0 malfunctions. That's better than the new Cheyenne turret Boeing's testing. He smiles. "You know, I flew bombers in WDWB. We had sights worse than your ring. And, Bede, if someone had thought of this back then, a lot of boys would have come home." He stands, extends his hand. "Sergeant O'Connor, I'm authorizing immediate deployment of your system across the 4th Bomb Wing. Brooks is being reassigned to a desk job in London. He's better with paperwork than people." O'Connor shakes his hand, speechless. "One more thing," Castle says. "We need a proper name for it. O'Connor sight has a nice ring to it. By August 1944, the O'Connor sight is standard equipment on over 500 B-17s. Boeing, impressed by the field data, incorporates its design principles into the Cheyenne turret, adding a reflector sight and peripheral mirrors to the production model. The turret, which rolls off assembly lines in September, cuts B-17 tail attack losses by 38%. O'Connor continues flying missions, his personal kill count climbing to 9 confirmed. On the 12th of September, during a mission to Munich, his bomber takes a direct flak hit to the wing. He helps 2 wounded crew members escape before bailing out over France. The French resistance hides him for 3 weeks, smuggling him to Allied lines in October. He returns to Mildenhall to a hero's welcome. Haley pins a distinguished flying cross on him, and the base renames Hangar 3, O'Connor Hall. But O'Connor stays humble. He spends his free time training new gunners, still wearing the same flight suit he'd had since his first mission. In November, he's rotated back to the US, where he's offered a commission as a second lieutenant. He turns it down. "I'm a gunner, sir," he says, "not an officer." He returns to his hometown of Boston, takes a job as a mechanic in a local airport, and marries his high school sweetheart, Mary. He never talks much about the war. His kids grow up knowing their dad fixed planes in the Air Force, but they don't learn about the mirrors or the sights until 1985, when a group of former B-17 gunners tracks him down for a reunion. Tommy O'Connor. Miller yells, hugging him, "You old son of a gun, you saved my life over Berlin in 44, remember?" O'Connor smiles. "Yeah, I remember. You owed me a beer." That night, over dinner, the gunners tell stories of missions, of losses, of the magic mirrors that kept them alive. O'Connor's son, Michael, leans in. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell us about this?" O'Connor shrugs. "It wasn't about me, it was about coming home. Everyone deserves that." January 1945, 30,000 feet above Dresden. Staff Sergeant Ray Torres, one of the first gunners to get O'Connor's sight, kneels in his B-17's tail section, his breath fogging the plexiglass. Through the reflector sight, he locks onto an Me-262, Germany's new jet fighter, faster, deadlier, and until now, nearly impossible for tail gunners to hit. The jet's silver fuselage cuts through the air, closing at 600 miles per hour. Torres tracks it, his eyes flicking between the red reticle and the right mirror, where his tracers will appear. Jet at 6 o'clock high. He yells into the intercom, "Closing fast." The Me-262's cannons flash, and Torres feels the bomber shudder as shells hit the wing. He fires a 2-second burst, watching the tracers in the mirror. They're behind the jet too slow. He adjusts the reticle, leading the Me-262 by 2 full inches. The jet's speed demands more lead, and fires again. This time, the tracers converge on the jet's engine. There's a bright orange flash, and the Me-262 spins out of control, its tail section shearing off. "Confirmed kill," Torres shouts. It's the 12th kill credited to an O'Connor sight against jet fighters, a statistic that would have been unthinkable 6 months earlier. By early 1945, the system has spread beyond the 4th Bomb Wing to the 15th Air Force in Italy, where B-24 Liberator gunners adapt it to their own tail sections. Even the Royal Air Force, which flies Lancaster bombers, requests copies of O'Connor's design to modify their own defensive armament. Back in Boston, O'Connor hears about the jet kills from a letter he gets from Miller. "You'd think those Me-262s are made of paper with your sight," Miller writes. "We're hitting 'em like they're sitting still." O'Connor smiles as he reads it, then tucks the letter into a shoebox under his bed, one of dozens from gunners he's never met, all thanking him. He rarely mentions the sight at work, but his boss, a former army mechanic named Joe, notices. "You ever fly bombers in the war?" Joe asks one afternoon as they fix a Piper Cub's engine. O'Connor nods. Tail gunner. Heard about some guy who invented a mirror sight for B-17s. Joe says. Saved thousands of lives. Wish I knew who he was. O'Connor just grins and hands him a wrench. Probably just some guy who got lucky. But luck has nothing to do with the site's growing legacy. In February 1945, the U.S. Army Air Forces, USAF officially adopts it as the Field Expedient Tailgun Aiming System. Type A, the first time a frontline soldier's unauthorized modification, has become standard issue without formal testing. Boeing's Seattle factory even invites O'Connor to consult on the final design of the Cheyenne turret, but he declines. I just made what I needed to survive. He tells the letter they send. You boys know how to make it right. The turret, which enters full production in March 1945, is a testament to O'Connor's vision. It includes a high-intensity reflector sight based on his P-51 salvage, and 3 built-in convex mirrors, positioned exactly where he'd mounted his scrap ones. By the end of the war, over 8,000 B-17Gs and B-24Js are equipped with the turret, or the standalone O'Connor sight, cutting overall tail attack losses by 41%. On May 8, 1945, VE Day, O'Connor is working in the airport when a group of pilots flies over in a formation of B-17s. They dip their wings as they pass, and O'Connor waves Mary, who's brought him lunch, squeezes his hand. They're waving at you, she says. He shakes his head. They're waving at all of us who came home. But some know the truth. In June 1945, the USAAF sends O'Connor a medal, the Legion of Merit, for exceptional contributions to defensive armament effectiveness. The citation mentions the site, but downplays his role. Sergeant O'Connor's innovative ideas, when adapted by engineering personnel, significantly improved bomber survivability. O'Connor doesn't mind. He frames the medal and hangs it in his garage next to a photo of Lady Luck. Years pass, O'Connor and Mary have 3 kids, and he runs his own small aircraft repair shop. He still gets letters from former gunners, some with photos of their families, others with stories of grandkids who know Grandpa survived the war because of a guy named Tommy. In 1965, he's invited to a B-17 reunion in Dayton, Ohio, where he meets Mac for the first time since the war. Still bending rules? O'Connor says, clapping Mac on the back. Mac laughs, his scar creasing. Retired now, but I still tell my grandkids about the time we built a sight out of junk and outsmarted the brass. At the reunion, a former general, now in his 70s, seeks O'Connor out. It's General Castle, the man who'd authorized the site's deployment. You know, Castle says, the Air Force still uses your mirror principle in some of its cargo plane defenses. Never would have happened without you. O'Connor shrugs. Just did what I had to. In 1983, the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force in Dayton contacts O'Connor. They want to display his original sight, the one he'd used on Lady Luck, in their World War II exhibit. O'Connor hesitates at first. The sight is in his attic, dented and rusted. But it's a piece of his past. Mary encourages him. It's not just yours anymore, she says. It's theirs, all the boys who came home. He ships it to the museum, and they restore it, mounting it next to a B-17 tail section. The plaque reads, Field Expedient Tailgun Aiming System, designed by Staff Sergeant Thomas O'Connor, 1944. This modification, built from salvaged parts, tripled B-17 tail gunner hit rates, and saved an estimated 8,400 aircrew lives. O'Connor visits the museum in 1984 with his grandson Tim, who's 10 years old. They stand in front of the exhibit, and Tim stares at the sight. Did you really build that, Grandpa? O'Connor nods. With a friend. We just wanted to come home. Tim touches the glass case. It looks like junk. O'Connor laughs. It was junk, but it worked. As they walk through the museum, O'Connor stops at a display of B-17 crew photos. He points to one, a young man with a wide smile, standing next to a bomber. That's Jake Miller, he says. He survived because of that sight, has 3 kids, 6 grandkids. Tim looks up at him. Do you think about the war a lot? O'Connor pauses, then nods. Not the bad parts. The parts where we looked out for each other, that's what matters. In his later years, O'Connor's health fades, but he still goes to the airport every Saturday, sitting in a folding chair and watching planes take off. Former gunners still call him, now in their 80s and 90s, just to say hello. One call from a man named Ray Torres brings tears to his eyes. I named my son after you, Torres says. He's a pilot now, flies C-130s for the Air Force. Tells everyone his dad survived the war because of you. O'Connor dies in 2001 at the age of 79. His obituary in the Boston Globe mentions his military service, his repair shop, and his family, but only a single line about contributions to bomber defensive systems during World War II. No one from the Air Force attends his funeral, but over 50 former gunners do, all wearing their old flight jackets, some with O'Connor sight patches sewn on. At the graveside, Miller stands up to speak. Tommy O'Connor wasn't a hero because he invented a sight, he says. He was a hero because he refused to let his friends die. He looked at a broken system and said, I can fix this. And he did. We're all here today because of that. After the service, Tim, now a college student, walks over to Miller. Grandpa never talked much about the war, he says, but he kept all your letters, every single one. Miller smiles, wiping his eyes. He was that kind of guy. Never wanted credit, just wanted us home. Today, the O'Connor sight remains on display at the National Museum of the U.S. Air Force, a reminder of how a single soldier's ingenuity can change the course of a war. In 2014, the Air Force posthumously awarded O'Connor the Distinguished Service Medal, the highest non-combat honor, citing his unwavering commitment to his fellow airmen and his revolutionary contribution to military technology. But for the gunners who knew him, the medal doesn't matter. What matters is that they came home, that their kids grew up, that their grandkids got to hear their stories, that a 22-year-old tail gunner from Boston, with no engineering degree and a lot of courage, looked at a broken sight and decided to build something better, because he couldn't bear to watch others die while waiting for approval. Sometimes, the greatest innovations aren't born in labs or boardrooms. They're born in the dark, in the cold, in the quiet moments when someone says, "This isn't right, and I'm going to fix it." That's the legacy of Thomas O'Connor. Not a medal, not a museum display, but thousands of lives saved, thousands of families made whole, and a simple truth. When people look out for each other, even the impossible becomes possible.